and we'll sing all 3 verses. That's number 343, I Will Sing of My Redeemer.
Okay, so we will be starting our afternoon program right now, and we're going to have Jim come up and present, and then we'll have a break, and then we'll have another presentation later this afternoon.
I'm going to be doing some show and tell type stuff here, so I would encourage you to come closer so that you can see better, because some of the stuff's a little small. Also, if you're closer, I can see your faces, and this session's going to be a little more interactive than church was. I was in a hurry this morning trying to get through that before too many stomachs started growling, so. Anyway. Yeah, come on up. Okay, I didn't really plan to do this session in the sanctuary here, but they said that's the only place we can live stream it, so we're kind of putting things together. God gave me the idea of putting some slides up on to make it a little more nature-y. Anyway, I'm glad that's working. Wish the resolution on the slides was a little better, but these are some things I took a long time ago. And that's all I really had with me. Okay, letting people get settled in, yeah. Let's start with a word of prayer, okay? Father, thank you for this group and this opportunity to talk together about things and that we'll have to deal with in the future here. Give us your wisdom and especially your spirit for this meeting, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so let's go on an imaginary hike. Some people said a virtual hike. That's what got me the idea to do the slides. So hopefully that helps. Maybe picture yourself hiking here. We're just doing a Sabbath afternoon hike. We're going to start out talking about a Sabbath afternoon hike, and then we'll project to more like end time flee to the wilderness stuff towards the end a bit. And I don't have it planned exactly what I'm going to be doing, okay? So this is going to be a little looser. So we're going on a hike, and just picture us out there a ways. We hiked out a ways, and we stopped, and we're, take a rest break or whatever at one of these nice, pretty places. You get to choose which one you want to be at. And we're just kind of sat in a same area where we can talk a bit. So that's the setting that I want to have, okay? So what I'm going to start out by saying is I know of 3 groups of Adventists that have gone on a simple Sabbath afternoon hike like we've set up. And for one reason or another, they ended up spending the night. Okay? 2 of the groups, it simply got late on them. They had hiked into relatively rough country, and they wisely decided it would be better to spend the night than to try to hike out in the dark and stumble around and maybe get really lost or somebody get hurt, and then we still have to spend the night. So they chose to spend the night, where they were and pick their spot a little bit. The 3rd group, they actually got lost. Excuse me. They had hiked up to, parked the cars here and hiked up this ridge, up to a mountain peak. And we're watching the sun set off over in the distance, and they're thinking, we need to get back to the cars. So they start heading down. Unfortunately, partway down, there was a trail that went deeper into the woods, and they got off on that trail. And they're heading down, so they think they're heading to the cars, but they're actually going deeper and deeper into the woods. And by the time they realized something's not right, it was too late, and they were too confused to try to find their way out in the dark, so they ended up spending the night. And all of these things happened within, say, a 60-mile radius, okay, in the southern central California area and northern southern California area. And so I can't help but think if it's happened that often in that small an area, it's probably happened other places around the country. And I was sharing this with a group up in Idaho earlier this summer. And they're like, oh yeah, that happened to a group up here not too long ago. And I wanted to get more details about it, but I wasn't able to. But yeah, so it's happened, okay? But more importantly, if it's happened to that many times in that small an area, it could happen again. And so what I want us to do, even though obviously we just went on Sabbath afternoon hike, we're just sitting in a circle, so I don't want anybody to feel threatened. But let's pretend that it's happened to us here, now. Okay, so you got the picture? So we've gone on a simple Sabbath afternoon hike, taking whatever it is you usually carry on a Sabbath afternoon hike. And we've realized that for whatever reason, we need to spend the night. And we just have, by the time you realize that, it's usually fairly late in the day. Let's give ourselves like an hour, maybe an hour and a half of daylight left. Because if we had more time, we could figure out a way to get out. But we don't have more time because, just the way it's going. So one of the first things I would do would get the group together and kind of, okay, let's make some plans. This is where, what the deal is. Our plans have changed. It's not just a Sabbath afternoon hike anymore. We're spending the night. And as soon as I explained all that, one of the, again, first things I would do is ask the group, okay, what do you have with you that would help us? You know, we kind of take an inventory. We're writing all this all together. What do we have with us? And so I'm asking that question here to you all. Now, I know you're not set up for a Sabbath afternoon hike right now, so think back to the last time or times you did a Sabbath afternoon hike. What did you bring along? If anything.
Water.
Okay, water, yeah. Okay, how many of you would have had a water bottle? Excellent. Okay, water bottle's an important piece of survival equipment. If you're carrying one regularly, keep up the good work, okay? And I brought some toys here. And this is where the show and tell comes in. So I'm probably going to talk about each one as we go rather than wait to the end and then talk about them. I think this will stick better. Here's water bottle. This is a little case I got recently. I haven't had a chance to rig up some straps. I got a strap, but I haven't, anyway, hooked it up and stuff yet. Anyway, it works for this demonstration pretty good. So we got a water bottle here. Can I encourage you to carry a stainless steel water bottle? Single-walled, okay? Not the double-walled, but single-walled. Why? I can put this in the fire. The other thing that goes with that is this rubber piece here. I'll have to be honest with you, I don't like this particular bottle, but it has the features. The top goes on hard. Okay, this can go in the fire. There's no rubber or plastic that's going to melt and get yucky. This go in the water, on the fire. What's special about being able to put this in the fire? Boil the water so we can purify it to make more. Because probably by that time we're thirsty and all our jugs are out of water. Okay, so we're going to want to make some more water. Okay, anybody carrying a water bottle like this? One hand back there. Good for you. Okay. It looks like it has a plastic outside, but you're willing to burn that off if you need a drink, right? Yes. Yes. Okay, so I just start out with one that's like this. Okay, anybody have anything else? Pardon? Activated charcoal. Part of my first aid kit too. Okay? Yeah, I might as well say it now as later. The main items I'm going to be talking about are in, just a minute, the main items I'm going to be talking about are in my thinking, a different category than a first aid kit. I mean, I'm not saying don't carry a first aid kit by what I'm saying here at all, because I carry one. Okay? It's just this you are going to need in order to survive, right? If you don't have more water, what's going to happen to you? You're going to dehydrate and die. Okay, so like this is a survival issue. Okay, the first aid kit, you carry it anyway, but you hope you don't have to use it, right? So it's not something that you are definitely going to need in order to survive if nobody gets hurt or injured. If somebody gets injured, then it becomes very necessary. Okay, but if nobody gets hurt, then it's not. And so I'm drawing it's a fine line, but I'm drawing a line between those type of things. Okay, so like the stuff that I'm featuring here are things that you will need in order to survive. Okay, you're packing a knife? What kind? Okay. And you had your hand up too, sister.
I just would like to know where you bought that.
Pardon?
I just would like to know where you bought it.
Where you purchased it.
Where you buy it.
I still didn't hear. Where did I buy this? I bought this online. Again, I wouldn't get this particular one. The one I would recommend, Self-Reliance Outfitters. Get the one for them that they have. Okay, I don't like this one because the lid goes on. It's like a struggle to turn the lid. I think the seal is too good. And so, anyway, that's why I don't like it. The one that Self-Reliance Outfitters makes, though, if I was going to go buy one, that's the one I would get. Yes. Okay, so for knife, I have a Swiss Army knife here. Okay. We'll talk more about this knife in a bit. No, about knife in a bit. I used to carry this knife, all right? Carried it for years. And the reason I carry this particular knife is because it has, in addition to the knife blade, it has a saw blade. And the reason I want a saw blade is something that happened to us. This happened years ago. And I don't even remember the occasion, but it was a group of us were up at Wawona for some gathering. And it was in the wintertime, and some people went for a walk up to the bridge. Those of you who know Wawona, going hiking up to the bridge. It's a very typical thing to do up there. And a girl slipped on the ice and hurt herself. And somebody else came back, and we're going to need to pack her out. And we didn't have anything to pack her out with, so we took some of our jackets and made a little stretcher. And anyway, we're trying to carry her out like that. And because jacket material is often slippery, partway back, we slipped and dropped her again. We felt really bad about it because she was already hurting, not able to walk, and just because she was hurting so bad, and we dropped her again. And I thought, if I'd had a saw, I could have easily cut a couple poles. We could have made a better stretcher, something that you're not going to drop your patient with. And so ever since then, I've worked towards carrying a saw. I have found the saw comes in handy for many other things as well. I've never had to cut poles to make a stretcher, but I've sure used it for a lot of other stuff. So highly recommend something with a saw, but we'll talk more about that. So here we go. Okay, we got a knife and we got a water bottle. What else? Pardon? Your jacket. Okay. I'm going to save that one. We'll talk about that in a bit. Jacket's a good thing to carry. Yes? Flashlight. Okay, flashlight's in my thinking again, is in that same category as the first aid kit. Okay, if everything goes fine, you walk in, you walk out, you don't even need it, right? Whereas I am going to take drinks off the water bottle and so on. And so this is more, necessary for survival. I carry a headlamp, same idea, okay? But it's in that category of the first aid kit, okay? Okay, somebody said fire starter. Are you packing a fire starter? Are you carrying a fire starter when you hike? What you got? You do, good. Something, yeah, okay. So, what I have here for that those of you way in the back, you're welcome to move forward so you can see this stuff. This is just a little leather pouch. And in the little leather pouch, a little Bic lighter. I have one of these on my keychain, so I got it with me all the time. I started carrying it just in case, right? I've been surprised how much I've used it. But anyway, something like this. How hard is it to carry something like this? Easy to carry. And I want you to imagine spending the night in the cold, dark woods, compared to spending the night in the cold, dark woods with a fire. That's a huge difference. And this is all that makes that difference. Now, interestingly enough, all three of these groups that I talked about, somebody in that group had something to make a fire with. All right? I don't know what it was in all cases. So they were all able to have a fire. And I'm sure they were very glad about it. And one of the main points I want to make in this talk this afternoon, so I'm jumping to conclusion right here, right now. I'm going to say it right up front, though. On the hike where they went up to the peak and then ended up getting lost on the other trail, there was a 9-year-old boy on that hike. He had he called it his emergency kit. And I wanted to find out what all he had in his emergency kit, but I never got around to it. Anyway, in his emergency kit, he had some matches. And because that 9-year-old boy had some matches, that group was able to have fire that night. Okay? None of the adults had anything. I want to challenge you to be that 9-year-old boy. Okay? How hard is this? Really? How hard is this? Okay? And you're carrying this anyway.
Jim, do you still make the bag?
Yes. I don't have any with me this particular trip. The last place I went to bought me out.
I know that. That's much easier than the kid.
We'll talk about that when we switch to kind of end time stuff more.
I carry a small device about this size, and I pay $60 a month for it, and I can pay month to month and cancel it any time. And it's a satellite communication device. It doesn't rely on the cellular network at all. And it has an SOS button that you can push. And the subscription also includes a medevac helicopter to come out and pick you up, take you to the hospital. It's a GPS device, so it tracks you wherever you are in the world.
You're reminding me of one of these groups, probably the one I know the least about because I didn't talk to anybody that was on that trip. The other two, I was able to talk to somebody who was on the trip. However, they featured this one in an article in the Pacific Union Recorder. It was a master guides group from one of the churches down in Southern California, went canyoneering. And when they realized they had to spend the night, I mean, none of them were hurt or injured. They were fine. They just, were in rough country and it just got laid on them, and they wisely decided to spend the night rather than hike out. Everybody was on their phones trying to text 911. And I'm like, you realize what happened? God has just set you up with an awesome learning experience, prepare you for what's coming, and you're trying to call 911 to come and save you? Oh, don't even get me going on that. If you need the medevac, that's one thing. But don't just go punch the button simply because your plan didn't go right.
I'm thinking like if the boulder falls on you and your arm isn't finished, and you'll
Yeah.
get out is cutting your arm off. That would be a good time.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to hear. Hard for me to hear them too.
But on the video,
Right. They're not going to get anything. Right. Okay, we got a hand back over there.
How about a book of edible plants?
The book of edible plants you want in here. While you're learning, carry the book. Mark?
String, nylon string, some type of string. You could have the bracelets of that rope, how you can hold it, or even around a knife blade. But you want to have something, even your shoelaces will work, but you want to have some kind of rope, some kind of string.
Okay, I'm going to clarify what we're doing here a little. You're getting just a little ahead of me, I think. We're pretending we went on a Sabbath afternoon hike to one of these places up here. And we've just, pulled in and sat around and we're talking, okay? All you have is what you have with you on that hike. We're not talking about what we could bring. I get to do that a little bit. We're going to do it some more in a bit. So that's why I said you're getting ahead of me. But how many of you bring string on a Sabbath afternoon hike? Yeah, see? So that's why I'm catching that one. We're going to save that for just a little bit. So I want to know what you brought with you. Now I want to go back to, somebody mentioned a jacket. I want to go back to that before we go on. So yeah, just hold that. Yeah, because we start talking about what we could bring, oh man, sky's the limit. So I want to talk first about what we do bring. Instead of a jacket, this is what I bring. Okay, not this particular one. I have actually 3 packs. I keep telling myself you don't need 3 packs, but whenever I try to get rid of one, I end up back with 3 again. The reason for that is I have my main grab-and-go bag. I mean, that's like what I'm going to grab when we go, and I'll have that with me till Jesus comes. Okay, that's my till Jesus comes bag. The other one is my Sabbath afternoon pack. I don't want to take my main grab-and-go pack on a Sabbath afternoon hike. It's just too much. So I have a smaller Sabbath afternoon pack that has a condensed version of everything still. Okay, and then my third pack is my demonstration pack, which is what I have here. Okay, in this demonstration pack, I have things that I can demonstrate with, okay? And this is the blanket that's in my demonstration pack. So I haven't actually spent the night with this blanket. However, I have spent the night a couple times with a blanket very similar to this. This one, the reason not this one, this is a wool blend. The one that I've actually used were more, 100% wool type things, but not necessarily thicker. If I knew I'm going to spend the night, I would definitely want something thicker, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Why do I carry a blanket rather than a jacket? Can be used for many, many things. To make that stretcher we talked about earlier being one of them. I can wrap up in this like a jacket, which I've done many times. Okay? But if I end up having to spend the night, I have something that'll cover me from head to toe. Let me tell you another experience I had. We were camped up in Little Yosemite Valley with a group of teen pathfinders, and the bear came into camp. That was an interesting thing in itself. We ended up chasing the bear off and so on. Anyway, one of the kids decided he wanted to sleep outside and see the bear again. So he felt the bear was going to come back and he wanted to see him again. And so I'm like, okay. However, middle of the night, I wake up and it's raining. I mean, cold rain. And just so that you get the picture here, by morning it had turned to sleet and then snow. And we heard later that a couple people had died actually from hypothermia in the same area. Just because this really cold storm came in all of a sudden and a lot of people weren't ready for it. Like one of the kids. So he's out, and I remember he's outside there, and I bet he's getting soaked. And I go out there, and sure enough, he was already hypothermic. Like in the morning, he said, thank you, because when I got out there, I was talking to him, he wanted to stay out there and see the bear. I'm like, no, you're getting inside the tent and put him in my sleeping bag, and because his sleeping bag was already soaked, because he said he knew he was already losing it mentally. And like in the morning, he told me that. So I gave him my sleeping bag, and so here I am now. I don't have a sleeping bag. It's a cold night. And so I put my jacket on, which kept me warm down to mid-thigh. Nice jacket I had at that point. But my legs were cold. And I thought, I want something that's going to cover me from head to toe, not just my upper half. And so I started carrying a blanket, for that reason, and all the other things that you can do with the blanket. Yes.
Regarding the water, can you buy a tablet that takes the water from the river? Get the water.
Like a filter?
A filter.
Yes.
For the water.
Yes.
A tablet.
Pardon?
Tablets.
Tablets, yes. Okay, or water purification tablets. Yeah, okay, it's a good idea to bring something to purify water. However, how many of us do that on a Sabbath afternoon? Hi. See, I see all kind of heads shaking. Okay, so I want to go back to what we have on the table here and just emphasize a couple things before we go on, because we're already starting to shift gears. Go ahead.
I also take this on all my hikes. It's pepper spray.
Yeah.
I don't know, I might come across an individual that might mean me harm or an animal that I could use this
Yeah.
with.
Not on a human, not on a bear.
No, I said human and possibly an animal. Better than nothing.
Bear would need
Pepper spray.
a full thing.
Okay, recently I ran across a video on YouTube. If you want to try and chase it down, the guy who put it together, it's Donnie's Dust or something like that. Paleo Tracks, I think, is the other. Donnie's Dust Paleo Tracks. I think that's the channel. And he has what he calls the 4 B's. And I'm just sharing this if it helps you. If it doesn't help, don't worry about it. But if it helps you, his 4 B's of the backcountry is a bottle, a blade, something to burn with, and a blanket. Okay? As being your main items that you want to have with you. So again, if that helps, fine. If not, don't worry about it. But as I've been thinking about it, these are kind of the 4 main things, my 4 main survival items that I have been carrying. And this is really the only one that's hard to carry. Like these 2 things will slip in your pocket, no problem. You're carrying the water bottle anyway. Okay? So, and just again, think about the difference that it would make having these items versus not having these items. Okay? Easy to carry. Well, if you end up spending the night, it's going to make a huge difference. Okay, got
What
some.
do you think about those, they're like those plastic, they're like silver blankets that are really small. They use them when emergency blankets. Have you seen them? They're all shiny.
We spent a cold night with those once. We had set up a shelter and a reflector fire in front, so we had a relatively sheltered, warm area. Those blankets work. You cover up, but there has to be some space between you and the blanket for them to work, because they work on reflective heat. In other words, where it's touching your shoulder, that's a cold spot. Okay, anywhere the blanket is actually touching you is a cold spot. And so they work. The worst thing about them, though, was there's a group of us that went out to do this experiment. By morning, 1/3 of the blankets were ripped. And so I decided right there, I'm not worrying about these space blanket things anymore, because we're kind of switching gears here a little bit. You'll notice when we flee, how long are we going to be there? Until Jesus comes. Okay? We don't know how long. We need to plan on being there indefinitely. We're going to be there till Jesus comes. If my blanket rips, like after one night, 1/3 of them have ripped. By the second night, probably 2/3 will have ripped. By the third night, they'll all be ripped. And we still got who knows how long to stay out there. Okay? I'm not going to rely on something that is not durable enough to last. Which brings up another point. What we need needs to be durable, and it needs to be sustainable. In other words, it needs to last you until Jesus comes. Okay, going back to the lighter. Is this going to last till Jesus comes? No. And so I might carry one of these in my pocket because it's easy and convenient, but in my pack, I have something that is sustainable. And that's where the flint and steel kit comes in. Okay, there's a few more sustainable methods, but the two main ones that most people know about or don't know about would be like the historic flint and steel. I'm not talking about the ferro rods that you strike. Okay, this is historic flint and steel where you have a piece of flint, rock, and a steel, and you strike it. Do I dare do that here in the church? So like this is my method of choice. Unfortunately, they're not easy to get a hold of, but here's a steel striker, piece of flint rock, and you find a sharp edge on the flint rock, which this rock's been pretty chewed up. I have to break some new edges on it. Let's see if this will work. Okay, so then you catch those sparks with some charred material, either charred cloth or charred rotten wood, and then you put that in a tinder bundle and blow it to flame. That's how that works. The other method that I'm going to mention is rubbing a couple sticks together. You have a fireboard and a spindle, lots of different ways to turn the spindle. You can spin it with your hands or get a handhold on top and a bow, or hook a string on it and somebody does like this, the other person's holding the system together. So like those two methods will last. You know, this method here, as long as I have the steel, that'll last till Jesus comes. Okay, rock sooner or later is going to wear out, but I can get more rock out in nature. Okay, the charred material I'm using in the tinder bundle, but I can get more of that out in nature. Okay, the fire drill, yeah, that's going to wear out, but you can get more of all of that in nature. So you want something that's sustainable, all your stuff. You know, fire just illustrates that very well. Was there another hand? No, okay. Oh, here.
I was just going to say, I think by faith, we're going to have to believe that if Israel can go 40 years with no one pair of shoes or whatever the case and one outfit, they did just fine, and we have to believe that God's going to do some of the same type of miracles. Because what if you lose your backpack, or what if, you fall down a gully or somewhere and you can't get to it? We're going to have a great amount of faith to trust God now, where we'll trust Him then to be able to get through that time. And I think Ellen White mentioned something about from the time in which we're in the time of trouble. We know there's a time, and then there's a great time of trouble.
Right.
Between those two, she kind of mentioned something about it sounded like she didn't mention years or dates, but she said it would be a short period. It sounds like she's speaking of a short period.
Well, this morning we read, she called it a short period for the first part of the time of trouble. However, how long have we been saying Jesus is coming soon? I understand. I'm just saying that short or soon or rapid, these are relative terms.
Yeah.
And we've been saying Jesus is coming soon for, almost 200 years now.
Yeah, no, I'm speaking of,
And so if soon can be 200 years, short can be still several months.
Yeah.
Maybe even a couple years. I don't know.
Yeah, only God knows,
Yeah.
But
yeah. There was another hand here, Mark. Oh, across the way from you.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how she says it, but basically she says there's like a carrying time to actually test our faith and trust in him. And then she compares it to how little we've used our faith up to that time. So there is going to be, but who knows how much time it is. All I know is God's grace is sufficient for us. But, we don't know how long it's going to be. Yep.
We're touching on a whole nother subject here, because there are people who believe strongly that we shouldn't be doing any of this stuff because God's promised to take care of us. I'll just say one thing for that. I'm not trying to open a whole nother can of worms here, unless we need to open that. I don't know. The parable of the talents. Okay, who was acting in faith? The person who traded with his talents, or the person who buried his talent? The one who traded. Okay, the person who buried his talent was not acting in faith. And he got kicked out at the end of the parable. I mean, most of the other ones just got shut out in that series of parables. That guy who buried his talent actually got kicked out, or cast out, as it was said. And so that lets me know that what he did was fairly grievous.
It's better.
Hang on a minute, brother. My point here is God has told us, I mean, Jesus said it 2,000 years ago, time's going to come when you're going to have to flee to the mountains. So we've known that we're going to have to go to the mountains. We've been given the time and the opportunity to prepare. Those are talents, both of those. Are we going to bury those talents and say, oh, God's going to take care of me, and call that faith? Or are we going to say, okay, God's told me this, like Noah. God told Noah the flood was coming, told him to build a boat. And I can't help but think, what happened to Noah's brothers and sisters? Look at the genealogy there. Lamech was Noah's father, and he had Noah, and then he also had sons and daughters. And so here's other brothers and sisters that Noah had, raised in the same family, going, having family worship together, going to the same church, all that stuff. And so maybe one of his brothers was an evangelist, and saying, Noah, look, there's all these hurting people in this world. You should be out helping other people rather than worrying about building that boat so much. Nevertheless, Noah was the one who acted in faith and built the boat, and he's the one that survived the ordeal. The brother didn't. Assuming that happened, because there's people nowadays throwing those same kind of arguments out. And so, again, are we going to act in faith based on the information that God has given us? He's given us the time and the opportunity to prepare. Or are we going to just say, no, God, you're going to have to take care of me?
I say it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah.
No, I'm not, and totally not against. I think everything you're teaching right now is a must. We must understand that and must have those things prepared. So I'm not against that. Don't get me wrong.
I didn't think so, but I know there are people who.
Yeah. No, I think from the time we go to the country, we need to be preparing for the caves and mountains. That's why he says, when you do not come down off your housetop to take anything with you, at that moment you ought to flee. Because at that moment, like you say, you ought to be already prepared for the cave or the mountains by that time. So no, I'm not against that, but I'm just saying the faith we're going to have to know that God too will do miracles that we won't be, just like he did of old. He's going to do some miracles if we have the faith to believe it.
Mark, just one over there.
I think the difference between the Exodus and the time at the end is going to be that they weren't walking in the fullness of the Holy Spirit, and we were supposed to be walking in the fullness of the Holy Spirit by that time. So to say that God's going to take care of us without actually preparing to meet him, I don't think that's a good plan.
Okay. There's a hand over here somewhere. Oh, yeah, way in the back there.
Just a perspective on short. Jesus told us to pray that our flight not be in winter. If God's going to answer that prayer in both hemispheres, it would have to be in the spring or the fall and not last longer than one season.
Notice the wording of the verse. He says, pray that your flight is not in the winter. I interpret that the time when you're actually fleeing. That doesn't mean you won't go through winter once you're out there.
But if you can't safely fly in winter, you can't safely live through winter either.
But if you get out there, you will have time to get set up, especially if you end up in a cave that you could winter in. We'll see. We'll see. Okay. I'm going to switch gears here just a little bit. I'm going to be really honest with you. I would want to bring more than this. I do bring more than this. And I know some of your wheels are already turning because from the comments we've gotten, okay? You're wanting to bring more than just this too. But before we talk about what more we could bring, I want to ask two questions. And the first question is, what is the goal of your hike? Okay, why are you going on a Sabbath afternoon hike? Why? Pardon? Okay, to get out in nature. All right. What else?
Exercise. I personally go out in nature to see areas, to see if it looks like it'd be a good place to go in time of trouble. Just because to sort of know the area, you know, I work in prison. I may just stay in prison, so I may not have to worry about any of this. But if I'm still here and my family, you know, able to go out, I would sort of like to know the area, see if there's streams, you know, sort of know the area.
Okay, I'm going to group that with the get out in nature because that's just a little deeper thought into it. That's fine. Why else do we go on Sabbath afternoon hike? Desiree.
Well, it is definitely to get out in nature and to just spend that extra time with the Lord. I just find it interesting, my particular life that I used to live, which is totally 100% different than what I did. We believed, because we lived in Alaska on 80 acres, this would be our backyard, what you just see right here, or our front yard. And so we really did believe that we would either walk out our front door or our back door and just continue on our type of living, you know. But when we would go out for hikes, I call them walks here because that's what most people do, I feel like here, but we would always bring a small Bible, which I can't read anymore because I can't read that tiny a print, and we'd always have the little hymnals because that's really, for us, it was a worshipful experience. So it wasn't, we just lived this. This was our everyday life. Yeah. But I'm looking at these pictures and it's reminding me a lot of that. So.
Okay, I'm going to group that with the get out in nature and get close to God. That's all kind of one package here. Yes? Why else do we go on Sabbath afternoon hikes?
I think to prepare ourselves physically and mentally. So when we get up there, I think that most injuries happen with people that aren't physically fit, and that looks very beautiful, but it's also very dangerous. That is so beautiful, all the pictures you're showing, but nature hides, it's very dangerous. People slip and fall, and they hurt themselves, or they hurt their backs. They can't walk. Going up there is physically preparing, mentally preparing yourself for this.
Okay.
I go to challenge myself.
Pardon?
I go to challenge myself and to also learn new skills or develop new skills. Okay. So I also, every time I go, I build up my confidence. Like I'm better at orientating myself out in nature, feeling more comfortable in that environment because I'm normally not in that environment.
Okay,
That's it.
good. Okay, we had another hand back here. Mark's going to get his exercise, even though we don't go on the hike.
Honestly, with the group that I've been going with, it's been for me, especially the most recent time, to sort of see where I'm at physically, and also I think about the worst case scenarios. So just sort of imagining what I would need just in case I were put in that situation and would have to survive. So honestly, that's what it's become for me. I also appreciate nature, of course, but that's really been because I have such a desire to get out of the city and in the country. I just think about those things.
Okay, I'm going to categorize what I'm hearing here, and just so we can move on. I'm hearing three main reasons to get out. Okay, one's to get out into nature, closer to God. Okay, all of those things we talked about already. The other one's get some physical exercise and fresh air. Okay, hike's good exercise. I heard it alluded to, and also heard alluded to the third reason that we go, that maybe we don't want to admit, but it's definitely there, and that's for some good fellowship. Okay, you mentioned going out with a group. Yeah, I go out with groups all the time. Get some good fellowship, all right? Those are all good reasons. They're all very good reasons. And I want to challenge you to add one more to that. And that is the title of the sermon this morning, Live and Act Holy, in reference to the coming of the Son of Man. Some of you are already there. So the last couple comments kind of took it that direction. And this is actually what got me thinking to put the talk this morning together the way I did. Okay? Live and act holy in reference to the coming of the Son of Man. So if we're doing everything in reference to the second coming, what does a Sabbath afternoon hike have to do with the second coming? Well, some of you already mentioned it. You know we're going to be out there. And you want to prepare yourself for that. And getting out into nature, that's an excellent opportunity to learn some new skills like the brother said here. Okay? Familiarize yourself with it. Run what-if scenarios like we're doing here. I've done that with hikes lots. Get back in a ways, sit them all down. Okay, what if we had to spend the night here? Just kind of work through it. What are you carrying? It's like, oh, yeah, I wish, if that actually happened, I'd want to be carrying a little bit more than what I'm carrying right now. That's the conclusion most people come to. Okay, so how can you easily work that into what you do carry? And that's one reason I'm showing this, because like all of these three things here will fit into this no problem. This isn't any harder to carry than the bottle itself, right? So that's the first question. What are the goals for your hike? Encourage you to include that end time component. Like some of you are already doing. That's great. Rest of us, let's work on it. Okay, second question. Remember I said there was two questions before I start talking about what else I would want. Second question is, what am I willing to carry? The wording here is a little tricky, so stay with me. What am I willing to carry when it's a simple Sabbath afternoon hike where we're not planning to spend the night, so that I would have it with me if we did have to spend the night? Okay, and that's probably going to vary from person to person. One person, I'm not willing to carry anything. Somebody else, no, I'm willing to carry a little bit more. And just for example, I used to live in Bakersfield, okay? So you all know what summers are like here. I know what summers are like here. We went on a Sabbath afternoon hike in the summer. And there were people who went on this hike that didn't even bring a water bottle. Okay? You live in California, you know what's going to happen on just the average afternoon in summertime. It's going to get hot. What happens when you get hot? You get thirsty. And just for the record, last summer, a family and their dog died of dehydration up in the Mariposa area. I don't know if you heard about that in the news or not. Okay, there was this family, they were doing this loop trip, and they're hiking up the hill back to their car, and they're starting to feel bad. And so they're trying to hurry back to the car rather than going back down to the river. Well, if you haven't thought of it this way, keep it in mind if you're ever in a situation like this. If I drink the river water, yes, I might get sick if I don't have any, purification device or anything. There are cures for those sicknesses. There is not a cure from death for dehydration. Okay? Like you die of dehydration, there's no cure for that. If you get giardia because you drank some bad water, they can fix that. I've had people go with me that didn't even want to drink the water that had been run through a filter and purified because it was river water. They think the only pure water comes from these little bottles. Or from the faucet. Just let you know, however long we are out in the wilderness, you can't carry enough of these to last until Jesus comes. Don't even try. Okay, you're going to be purifying water. I think our end-time wilderness experience is going to be like final training for heaven. Okay? Think about it. Where did God put Adam and Eve? In the garden. What was outside the garden? Shopping mall, theater, gym, grocery store. None of that stuff, right? Just a vast world full of nature. They were essentially placed in wilderness. That lets me know God created us to live in wilderness. And what does man do instead? We build cities and we shut ourselves away from nature for one reason or another. Even backpackers, they think they're going out and immersing themselves in nature, but yet at night they zip themselves into their little tent to shut themselves away from nature because whatever might creepy crawly thing come along at night and while they're sleeping. Adam and Eve, they were naked in the garden. They didn't have any tent to zip up in to shield them from anything. And Acts talks about the restoration of all things. What does that mean? We're going to be back in the garden again. Okay? Final training for heaven. We need to break these shackles that the world has messed with our heads, wrapped us up in. Okay, so back to the question. What are we willing to carry on a simple Sabbath afternoon hike where we're not planning to spend the night so that we would have it with us if we did? And I'm going to start pulling some stuff out of my pack. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of ideas out there. Those of you who came in more recently, you're welcome to move up to the front so you can see the show and tell stuff. I was going to say something else and I forgot. Oh well. The other thing I do want to say here before I start pulling stuff out is it's going to look like a lot. But I did an experiment, I guess this is like 2 or 3 years ago now. Is basically everything I'm going to show you, I made my own pack to fit it in. And the reason for that is, I'll just share this too. I'm going to talk about this tomorrow more. But one of God's solutions for all this stuff that's coming, like starting with country living, is for us to learn skills. Okay? Satan has arranged things so that the average person nowadays doesn't have any skills. Right? Something happens, you call the man, he comes and fixes it. Okay? We don't know how to do anything. Well, God wants us to know skills. I'll read you the quote tomorrow. And that applies to this too. So one of my goals is to make as much of my own equipment as possible. And so I made my own pack and put the stuff in it that I'm going to show you. And the total weight of the pack and the stuff was 11 pounds. Okay? And I'm sure if we were to weigh my demonstration pack here, it would be more than that. My Sabbath afternoon pack, I just got a new pack, so it's probably close to that. But the stuff I'm talking about here, again, this answers the question, what am I willing to carry? I'm willing to carry 11 pounds, all right? I'm not willing to carry, 30. 25 is even pushing it, okay? But I'm willing to carry 11 pounds. So I'll have stuff with me, whatever. Now, the other thing that goes right with that, and I'm going to have to back up a little bit here and then come back into it. We're talking in this whole program here about learning how to live out in the wilderness during the end times. Learning how to do that is very similar to learning how to do a lot of things in life, such as learn how to play a musical instrument, okay, learning how to drive a car. You could just go on down the list, okay, learning how to do things. I'm just going to pick a musical instrument, and because my granddaughter's learning violin, I'm just going to pick violin. Very arbitrary, sorry. But if you're going to want to learn a musical instrument, there's 3 things that you have to learn. Okay? 3 things that you're going to have to do, 3 things you're going to have to learn. What are they? And this, again, could be anything. And we're going to apply these 3 things to wilderness here, because it's the same 3 things. What? You got to practice. Okay, that goes with this one. Why do you practice? Okay, practice makes the difference between playing the instrument and playing it so it sounds good. Okay? I'm terming that skill. You become skilled at playing the instrument. Okay, so you need to be skilled. You need skills. Okay, what are the other 2 things? You need to develop skills. Skills is something you develop.
You need an instrument.
You need an instrument. Usually that's the last thing people, and they're like drawing blanks and not getting it. You cannot play a violin unless you have a violin to play. I'm going to say that again. Let it soak in. You cannot play a violin unless you have a violin to play. Okay? You need the equipment to be able to do stuff. You can't start a fire unless you have a fire starter to start it with. I'm going to be really honest here. We're Laodiceans, right? What's Laodicea's big problem? We don't recognize our need. Okay? Satan has set stuff up for us, right? We don't recognize our need. And so we don't think we need equipment. Why? Because if something happens, we call the man. He comes and brings the equipment, fixes it. What do? All we know how to do is flip switches, turn knobs and faucets and stuff, right? Push buttons. Guess what? There are no knobs or switches or buttons out in the woods. You got to do it. And you can't play the violin unless you have a violin to play. All right? I can't carry water in a water bottle unless I have a water bottle to carry the water in. I can't carve things with a knife unless I have a knife to carve the things with. I can't make fire unless I have something to start the fire with. So we got to carry some equipment. We don't want to do that. Okay? Human nature wants everything all set up for us. We don't even have to think about it. We don't have to plan ahead. We just show up and there it is. Think about it. Okay? Vacation Bible School, Pathfinders, even schools. You go to do crafts. You're a kid and you come in to do the crafts. Everything's all laid out there on the craft table for you. You didn't have to plan any of it. That's the way human nature, that's what human nature wants. There's a saying among basket weavers that when you're ready to sit down and start weaving the basket, you're half done. Because of all the prep work to gather the materials and get it ready, and now I'm ready to weave the basket. I'm half done by the time you reach that point. Sometimes more than half done, depending on the material. And so we've been deceived into thinking we can get by somehow without the equipment. What did Jesus do in his early days, before he began his ministry? He was a carpenter. Can you imagine a carpenter trying to do his carpentry thing without any equipment? It doesn't work. Okay, so I mean, Jesus modeled this in his life. You know, Jesus is our example in all things. Okay? So, we need some equipment. And it doesn't have to be a whole bunch, but we need some stuff. Now, I already showed you, I would want more here. I would want a more substantial, sustainable method of starting the fire. Yes, I carry this because it's simple and easy, and I've got it with me all the time because it's on the keychain. But in my pack, I got a flint and steel kit, okay, like I showed you a minute ago. I would want a more substantial knife. Something like this, a more full tang that I can do some serious carving with. It's one of the reasons I stopped carrying this one, is because it has this corkscrew right where you put your thumb. If you're doing serious carving, that starts hurting after a while. The other thing with knife that you have to realize, there's actually two categories of sharp edge cutting tools that we need. One of them being the knife for fine carving and meal preparation. But in addition to that, we already talked about the saw. And I would want a more substantial saw. So I got this pruning saw, okay? And you also need something that you can chop with, which I brought this one for that to demonstrate. Okay, something I can actually chop with. Okay, so we got a more substantial fire starter, more substantial cutting tools. Water bottle's pretty much the same. However, I'm going to bring something else along with the water bottle. How much extra space does that take up? And you can get these for, I don't know, $6 or so at Walmart. Now, if I'm using this in this kit because I have it. And the guy who was talking about the 4 Bs, he was using his bottle as a cook pot, so that really gets included in my thinking there. The self-reliance outfitters people, they make one that's a little bit taller, which I would definitely get if that was what I was going to carry. Okay, it's like half again as much, because the volume for this, let's say I'm boiling water in this to fill this bottle. I'd have to boil the water, dump it in here, boil water again, dump it in here before this is full. Then I need to boil water again, let it cool down so I can drink it, because I'm thirsty, right? That's why I'm doing all this. So, think of all the time that it's going to take to all those boilings. So I would want a more substantial cook pot. Thought I had something in here, guess not. Anyway, I would want more substantial cook pot than this, but like I said, I had this, so I got it in my demonstration kit here. Okay, we talked about the blanket already. That kind of transitioned us into this thinking. What else? Oh, yeah. Simple wool hat. You realize you lose over 70% of your body heat from your neck up? This is going to go a long way towards keeping you warm. How much space does that take up? How heavy is that? Right? Scarf. A scarf really isn't an essential item like the rest of these are, but a scarf is just so useful for so many different things. This is your towel, your washcloth, your tablecloth. The loose weave on these schmogs, I've used them for a mosquito net. Extra layer of bedding at night. Yeah, first aid applications. Bandana figures into this same category here. We've even used those for diapers. Tarp. Okay. I think this thing doesn't weigh very much. And notice the little strings on it. If you're going to use a tarp, you need some cordage to tie it up with. Did I just lose the PA? Yeah, I need new batteries. Keep it on me, just give you this. There you go. Here comes more. Testing, testing. Oh, we're back in business. Good. I had a little thing of cordage here somewhere. I was going to bring that out, but I'm not finding it right now. Did it spill on the ground here? No. Oh well. I'll just use that. That works. I would also bring some food. I'm not finding that. I just switched packs, so anyway, that didn't make it into the demonstration kit here. Yeah.
Yeah, I might have missed it, but you said there were 3 things to learning how to play the violin.
Oh, yeah.
One was
Okay,
practice, one was
so
getting
there's
the violin.
skills, there's the equipment. The third one is just knowledge. Like learning how to read music, okay, would fit into the knowledge for that category. Knowledge for the wilderness category would be like direction finding, that kind of knowledge. Wild edible plants that we mentioned earlier, knowing which plants are good for what. Also like useful plants, knowing where to find certain things in nature. Like if you needed certain kind of resources, where you could go to get them. Just having that knowledge. And so then you put the knowledge and the equipment together, and that's what you need to develop skills. Thanks for bringing me back to that. So, by having these things here in my pack on a Sabbath afternoon hike, okay, let's say we run into a patch of wild edibles. Oh, let's pick some and start a fire and cook some. You go through that process, you won't forget that plant again. If I just look at it, oh, that's such plant, and off we walk, because I'm more interested in getting from point A to point B and back again. No, sit there and play with it. Okay? By the time you fix it and eat it, it's fixed in your memory from now on. Okay? So you have what you need in order to play with whatever God brings across your way as you're out in nature. And I really wish I had it right now, but I don't have it. The quote basically says, think about all of the things that God has put in nature to help us survive, basically. Those are my own words. And so doing this kind of stuff on Sabbath afternoon, I feel is, doing what that quote's saying to do. rather than just looking at it and talking about it, and then I forget it because I never did it. Actually go through the motions of doing it. Very typically what we've done on a Sabbath afternoon hike is we go out, sit down and have worship, make a fire, have worship around the fire, maybe cook something, and then hike out really quick before it gets dark, or use the headlamps to, hike out with. Done both of that. And that's how I've learned a lot of the stuff that I've learned. And it's so much more fun than just hiking in and hiking back out. Yeah, you got good exercise, you were into nature, but did you really interact with nature? Playing with this stuff, you actually interact with nature. And again, the last time I weighed my pack is like 11 pounds. I'm willing to do that. If that's too much for you, get together with somebody and somebody carry a saw, somebody else carry the chopper, that type of thing. That works too. Okay, let's see if I have anything in here that I want to show. Yeah. Oh, some toilet paper. Oh yeah, one more sort of list I want to give you here. Pardon? Yes. Okay. So with the first aid kit, in that category, there's like actually 6 things that I'm bringing along that are in that kind of category. They're not essentials like these are. If I had to spend the night, I'd be using all of these. Those 6 things I may or may not use depending on the situation, like we talked about with the first aid kit. Okay. The other thing would be compass that you mentioned. Okay. Depending on the trail, you may not need that compass, but then again, you might. Okay, so it's worth bringing along, but it's not an essential in the same sense that these are. The headlamp we talked about already. A whistle, okay, comes in handy for a lot of things. Not sure I want to get into whistle more, but develop a set of whistle signals with the group that you're with. Different number of blasts means different things. Keep in mind that 3 is like a recognized distress signal with sheriff, rescue, and ranger type people. So don't do 3. Okay, whistle, compass, headlamp. Oh, and some toilet paper.
Can I ask you a question? Where are you going with the compass? Where are you going? You're going into the wilderness, but where are you going? You need a compass to get there. Is there a direction?
That depends on the place. Okay, very typically I'm just hiking up a creek and back down the creek. Don't need a compass for that. But if I take off of that track, I might want to have the compass. Just to be really honest, I've kind of trained myself in primitive direction finding, where I can just look at the sun and know pretty much what time of day it is and have a pretty good idea of what the directions are. Okay? So for a long time there, I didn't carry a compass for that reason. However, because I've been doing more teaching, I'm carrying a compass now, so I can, if I have the opportunity, I can show somebody else how it works, if nothing else. Okay, but it does kind of take the worry out of stuff once in a while when you see certain stuff and you're like, okay, is this or isn't it? Pull out the compass, then you know for sure. So it's worth carrying. I mean, how much weight, we're not talking a whole lot more weight or anything.
So when we do flee up to the mountains, are we going to be continuing to move day to day, or are we going to find a spot and stay there until when? Are we looking for a spot to make our home there at night? What are we doing? We're just going to keep on walking?
Excellent question. There's a quotation about the angel waking her up in the middle of the night and says, get your family, let's go. And the angel takes her somewhere. So if the angel comes and gets me and takes me somewhere and says, stay here, I'm staying there. Okay? Short of that, I'm planning to move camp every couple weeks, at least. All right? For several reasons. One of them being And a lot of the native peoples were semi-nomadic that way. You know, they'd use the resources in one area and move on to another area, use the resources there, rather than totally depleting everything in this area. You know, I wouldn't feel right doing that. And so my whole system is portable, so that picking up and moving is not an issue. So, you know, short of, if the angel says stay here, then I'm going to stay. You obey the angel. But short of that, I'm planning to move every bit.
So like bring in a camp and going maybe
Uh-huh.
camp, maybe scouting a new camp, and then maybe different camp.
Yeah, just depends.
Just from,
Pardon?
you know, from a practical standpoint for me, I would want to stay near a water source.
Yes.
And I've been recently watching these things where people get lost. One advantage of having a compass, at least you know which direction, you know, if you pay attention, or you mark along the way so you know, there's that marker I left there. Oops, I've been going in circles. But the one thing I would say is stay near some kind of water source, because that's where a lot of people got in trouble, because they didn't have any water to drink. So, but God can provide. The funny thing is, one of the videos I saw, there was just a teeny weeny stream coming from looked like a spring. I personally think God put it there to help the lady survive. So God can, like He did for the children of Israel, He can provide water in the area, but I would still try to stay near water myself.
Yeah, again, you go where the angel leads you, okay? But short of that, it'd be wise to plan on being near water, because you're going to need it, and not just for drinking. Okay, I wish again, we'd planned to do this somewhere else, and I will show you a graphic, which I would like to throw on the screen right now, but that's not going to work. So I'm just going to teach it to you. So, what? Time. Yes, I know, I'm wrapping up. Anyway, I wish I could put this graphics on the screen right now. It's based on Proverbs 22, verse 3. And I want to teach you the Jim Buller mix match version of that. What I mean by that is every phrase comes from one version or another. I just put them together so that they would work for this. And it goes like this: wise people foresee trouble coming and avoid it, but foolish people keep going and suffer. Okay, say it with me. Wise people foresee trouble coming and avoid it, but foolish people keep going and suffer. Okay, that applies to a whole bunch of different things in life. Right now I'm applying it to Sabbath afternoon hikes and the final end times. Okay, don't get caught out there without the equipment that you are going to need in order to survive. It's not real complicated, it doesn't weigh a whole lot. Do it. Okay, wise people foresee trouble coming and avoid it. Okay, foolish people keep going and suffer. Especially like that person that didn't even bring water bottle on a hot Sabbath afternoon hike.
Jim?
Yes.
Here at the back. Two things, just a suggestion. One is, if you are planning in advance to go into an area, you know where the general area is, but you're not familiar with what's in the area. So we'll call it an unfamiliar area. Take a USGS or similar wilderness map. That would be something useful to have. The other thing I want to suggest is something called a sun still, and for that, the basic piece of equipment is a black piece of plastic, maybe 18 to 24 inches across. You can make yourself a water collection device.
Have you ever played with those?
I haven't personally, but I understand how they work.
Yeah, you need to do it personally. I have. I'm going to relate an experience, though, that somebody else shared with me. He was a Navy SEAL, or a former Navy SEAL, but he went back into SEALs after I talked to him. And he happened to be the guy that delivered propane to our property at the time. And anyway, he was just telling me about some of the training and experimenting that they did. And he said they put them on this get from point A to point B in the desert. And they had to rely on these solar stills. And each person had like 6 to 8 of them. And they were gradually losing over the trip. They were able to get wherever they were going, and they were being monitored, you know. But he's saying, like, even having 6 to 8 of them per person isn't really enough. The thing that cinched the nail on the coffin to me was I was reading something written by a ranger from Big Bend National Park down in Texas. Okay, that's hot country too. And he was talking about people going out without adequate equipment in general. And of course it came around to water, because in hot country water's always an issue. And he was kind of upset with all the hype that solar stills are getting. And he kind of closed his comment with saying, you know, take the plastic to make the solar still, so we'll have something to wrap your body in when we have to pack you out. So yes, solar stills will make water, but they don't make a lot. They don't make enough to sustain you. So yeah, play with them so you know what I'm talking about. Go ahead.
So you were talking about changing your location every 2 weeks, but what's the ideal direction to walk in? So we walk west, you hit an ocean, you walk east, you hit another ocean. So what's the ideal direction to walk in?
Like the other brother over here mentioned, do some exploring, get the map, look at the map. Okay, the quotation says we're going to flee to the most desolate and solitary places. Okay, where are those places on the map? Get a map and find them. Then go do some exploring. Now, just for the record, if you're going to actually practice going out and camping like this, which I strongly recommend that you do, okay, like we talked about practicing on the Sabbath afternoon hike, we'll take it to I want to challenge you to take it to the next level and spend the night. Okay, take a tarp with you so you can build a shelter, you know, some food and all this. If you get, let's say, a half a mile off the road, okay, conditions there are the same as way back up beyond. You know, everywhere once was wilderness, if you go back far enough. Like we went back to the whole Garden of Eden a while back. You know, at that point, everything was wilderness. And after the flood, kind of the same situation. So like even in your backyard once was wilderness. And so you don't have to get way back and beyond to experience wilderness. You can do it just like a half mile off the road. All right? So go play. Anyway, back to the Proverbs 22 verse 3, because there's one other thing I want to teach you with that. And if I had a whiteboard or something else, it'd be really nice. But just picture that, and we're doing an acronym, okay? W for wise, P for people, F for foresee, T for trouble, C for coming, wise people, foresee trouble coming, A for avoid it, B for but, F for foolish people, K for keep going, and S for suffer. Okay, so we just have a list of letters here. And I'm sorry, I did it my way. I should have done it backwards for you all.
Jim, if they want, I can email you.
Yeah. Coming down now from those same letters, W stands for water bottle, C stands for cook pot, F stands for fire starter, T stands for tarp, C stands for cordage, A stands for adequate clothing, B stands for bedding, F stands for food, K stands for knife, and S stands for scarf. All right? I will close. What?
What was the acronym?
Oh, yeah, it's on the handout. Oh, yeah, perfect timing, Nancy. Awesome. Yes, this is the handout. Yeah, okay, so she's going to be handing these out. Awesome. Yeah, I forgot that was even on there. Okay, yeah, that solves all of it. And then we get to do what's next. Okay, while she's passing that out, it's Sabbath, so I would rather not do this, but I want you to at least let you know about it. I have a book I put together. Okay, it will be for sale tomorrow. I will leave it up here. This is the desk copy. Desiree, I want you to walk away with this at the end of the session. Okay? Anyway, come and look at it if you're interested. We'll worry about that. I also have a write-up for the sermon this morning available if anybody's interested in that. This is on just a donation basis for the price of copying. I did it on Camp Awona's equipment, and I need to pay them back. Okay, so y'all have the handout? Almost? So anyway, I was driving from a program we had done in Kentucky a couple years ago to another program we were going to do up in South Dakota. And if any of you know what that drive's like, it's just, right through the middle of the Great Plains and just a whole lot of driving. And so I'm driving and thinking and praying and driving and thinking and praying. And I happened to think about how God told Noah to put the law to music so that the children of Israel, as they were marching through the desert, could learn the law. And so as they were marching through the desert, they'd be chanting the law. And I thought, well, it'd be really cool to have Proverbs 22, verse 3 to music. And on our way out there, out east, we had stopped in Colorado at my daughter's place. And my granddaughter, as I told you, is learning how to play violin. And so she had a little practice song, and I thought, well, maybe that would work, because it was a simple little song. And I tweaked it a little bit as I was thinking and praying some more, and came up with, wise people foresee trouble coming and avoid it. And because it's a memory device, it repeats itself. Wise people foresee trouble coming and avoid it, but foolish people keep going and suffer. But foolish people keep going and suffer. Proverbs 22, verse 3. Proverbs 22, verse 3. And then I thought, I wonder if the acronym thing would fit into it too, and it did. Yeah, it totally blew me away. I knew it was a God thing. And so the second verse is water, bottle, cook pot, fire, starter, tarp, and cordage. Water, bottle, cook pot, fire, starter, tarp, and cordage. Adequate clothing, bedding, food, pack, knife, and scarf. Adequate clothing, bedding, food, pack, knife, and scarf. Always keep them in your pack. Be sure to keep them in your pack. Because wise people foresee trouble coming and avoid it. Sing with me. Wise people foresee trouble coming and avoid it. But foolish people keep going and suffer. But foolish people keep going and suffer. Proverbs 22, verse 3. Proverbs 22, verse 3. The song is in the book with music. Okay, let's have prayer and close out. I'm going to leave the stuff on the table here for just a little bit if you want to come look at it, but I got to get this packed up and stuff for the next program. So, Father, thank you that we've been able to go on an imaginary hike today. Forgive us for being Laodicean and not recognizing our need. Hopefully this will help us to think in terms of that a little bit more. Not just our physical needs, but our spiritual needs as well, because they all work together. Faith and works going together. May we be like that 9-year-old boy we talked about earlier. May we be the one who has done extra to prepare ourselves to be a blessing to the group that you hook us up with. Whether it's a Sabbath afternoon hike or the group that we end up with when we flee to the wilderness in the final end times. Teach us to be an asset rather than a liability. And keep working with us to prepare us. May we be willing to act quickly because we recognize there's not a lot of time left. And so thank you for sending your Spirit to teach us all things. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, we're going to be taking a break in between this and the next presentation. So for those of you who would like to engage in a little physical activity, we're going to give the deacons an opportunity to work. And I'm going to exercise faith that you will put your hands in your pocket and we're going to collect a love offering for Jim. So I'm going to set a good example right now.